Hey everybody, it's Dustin again with the Webex Devices team, and today it's all about hybrid calendar. So we've done quite a few videos kind of showing off this feature. I've done some one button to push demos. We've done it with the WebRTC guest join with the new Microsoft integration we have, including CVI, which is getting ready to go generally available. I know we got a lot of people excited about that. So we've demonstrated how to do this, but what I haven't done is really spent a lot of time or talking about how the process actually works. And so we've had a lot of questions around this. And so what I thought I'd do today would be a little bit more of a technical overview of the hybrid calendar service and kind of how it works. We're not going to go too deep into the weeds, but we are going to go talking a little bit about some of the individual processes, as well as give you some tips and tricks as to how you can make the service work better for you. And then I might even kind of show you or talk about a few of the feature enhancements we've got coming down the road. So the reason this is important is, especially with some of the new announcements we've had with the Microsoft integration, there are a few things that may or may not cause some of these services to work correctly in your environment. And a lot of times it's not really anything but more of a configuration issue. So kind of talking through how the service works at a high level and understanding how you can make some changes will hopefully help fix or alleviate any of these issues that you may have. So we're going to talk about this, again, a little bit technical. Some things are going to be a little bit simplified. So bear with me. They're not exactly, maybe a little more complicated than I'm making them sound, but it's really more for the flow and just kind of get the point across. And if you have any questions, obviously you can reach out directly or fill out some comments below and we'll reply. But so in general, when it comes to hybrid calendar, there's really two different types of modes, I guess, if you will, that we would be able to process these meetings for. And it's going to be for users or for devices that are on personal mode. And then we've also got shared mode devices or room resource calendars. So personal mode's pretty easy, and I think everybody gets that. It's basically hybrid calendaring for the user. Now, when you enable a user for hybrid calendaring, that allows them to do all kinds of features with WebEx. It allows you to do the @WebEx options. It is used with the Teams client if you're using it. It also has, if you have a personal mode device like a DX or a Desk Pro, or even a board like we have here, it's what's going to provide that one button to push experience automatically for that user if they are enabled. Now, shared mode devices are a little different. Obviously, they're usually conference rooms, things that you want to book or schedule. We know we've done some demos of this where we've invited them into a meeting. So a very similar scenario, except for the fact that it's not tied to a user. It has its own resource mailbox. And we set that up inside of Control Hub. And then when we do that, we're able to then do the processing, push that meeting invitation down to the device. And then when it comes time for that meeting to happen, you walk into that room and that one button to push is going to be there. Now, this is the important part, is that I kind of want to explain how we actually process these meetings. There's kind of an order of operations, if you will. And this is a little bit simplified, but I think it's an important understanding as to how this works. So we primarily use a user and a meeting organizer as the primary source of truth when it comes to processing these meetings. So one common misconception about how we do this, especially with room systems, is that we would be reading the room's calendar and getting the information and then pushing it down to that device. While we can do that, that's actually not how we primarily process these meetings. We typically rely on the owner or the user for a couple reasons, but mainly because the owner or the meeting owner is typically the person who is going to have the most up-to-date information. They're kind of the primary contact for this. So whenever a hybrid calendar user sends an invite out and they invite a shared system, we've already got the ability to kind of scrape that invite and be able to see the meeting details, whether it's a WebEx, whether it's a WebRTC join, direct guest join for Microsoft, or just another generic SIP URI for another platform. As long as it follows our scraping capability standards, we will be able to pull that information, grab the meeting title, push that down, as well as the time that it's supposed to happen, and the join method to the device, and it's going to be there readily available. Now, how do we know that that room system is actually needing to get that pushed down? Well, by default, we actually will look at that organizer, the owner, the person's calendar, and when we look, we actually can see who's being carbon copied. So we know the email address of that room system, that shared resource, that device, because it's been set up inside of Hybrid Calendar. So since we're aware of that, we now know that that device needs to be added and ready for one button to push. And because we have the meeting information for that user, we can now use that same information, push it down to that device. And that's generally how most of our meetings are going to be scheduled, and how we're going to be able to process that information. Now, there are scenarios where we have to do something, and it's kind of a fallback or a secondary tier of the order of operations, and it's what we call attendee-based processing. Now, in this scenario, this is something that we've kind of recently started doing, and there's a couple reasons why, and we'll go into it. But if for some reason that meeting organizer is not hybrid calendar enabled, or they don't have it set up, we will actually fall back to what we call attendee-based processing. And because we realize that we know about that calendar that's in that meeting, we know that there is a meeting for that room resource, we will then fall back and actually read the information from that attendee and be able to process that meeting there. So if that calendar has all that same information, the meeting URL or the WebEx that we're joining, the WebRTC link, the time, the date, the subject, etc., we will then be able to put all of that information on that device, even if that owner is not hybrid calendar enabled. So that's a little bit complex, but not really. So the biggest takeaways here is that the owner of the meeting, we will process that first and be able to tell that a device is invited. If not, we will fall back to what we call attendee-based processing, and then we will be able to look at that calendar and be able to push that information down. Now, a couple reasons why this is important. Number one, I kind of mentioned that you may not have a user enabled for hybrid calendar. So where's a scenario where this may happen? Now, while we would love for every user to have a WebEx account and be able to use WebEx for their meeting platform, we realize that sometimes that's not the case. There may be Microsoft Teams, for example, is your meeting platform of choice, but you want to use the Cisco devices. So you may not want to sync all of your users to the WebEx cloud, and you may just have your devices set up there. So in this particular case, we wouldn't be able to read that user's calendar, so we would have to fall back to what we call attendee-based processing, and we would then have to look at that device's calendar to be able to push that information down. So that's a pretty common scenario that we have, and in order for us to be able to get that information, we have to be able to look at that calendar to be able to get that to there, since, again, we don't have access to that user calendar. So that can provide some challenges with Exchange and even Google, but we're going to talk mostly about Office 365 today, or the Exchange platform. And I'm going to kind of do a little quick demo, and we're going to show you what happens. And I'm going to show you a little tip and trick about some PowerShell commands you're going to have to do in order to make this happen and make it happen properly. So let me switch over here now to my display, so you guys can see me working here. So I've got Control Hub up here. The only reason I have this up right now is just to kind of talk about how, for those who haven't seen, I am going to go ahead and look at my workspaces here, and I'm going to pull up my my board behind me, which I've used in most of my demos, just to kind of show that we do have this set up right here, that I have the calendaring set up. It is set up for Office 365. This is the email address. So you kind of see here that this is the information that we get. You also have a feature here now to be able to view future scheduled meetings. I don't think I have any right now, so that would show up there. But it's important to make sure that you have your device set up with the Office 365 integration. And of course, you've got your users here, which you can set up for hybrid calendar as well. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and bring up my trusty Microsoft Teams app, just because it kind of is just a way for me to kind of show you some demos here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a meeting. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this HYB, Hybrid Calendar Demo. And I'm going to actually invite 2 room resources. So I'm going to invite the WebEx board 85 that we've done for almost all my videos. And I've also got a demo room resource calendar set up right here. So I'm going to invite 2 calendars. And the reason I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you something that could be a challenge for a lot of people, and it's an important part of this for you guys to understand here. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this. 30 minutes is fine. We're going to send this meeting out. And this is going to go to the back end. These room resources are set to automatically accept these. So they're going to accept this invite. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at my hybrid calendar. Actually, see here, this is in personal mode. So we talked about that. So this is under that user's calendar. and it's sitting right here. We're also going to look right here, and on my, I'm going to change this today. So this is today, and this is the demo that I just ran, and my name is posted all over here. So this pink is my actual calendar. So this is the hybrid calendar demo I've got, and if you'll see here, if I look at it, there's the Teams meeting information that's been sent. The demo room resource has accepted, so has the Webex board 85 behind me. Actually, you see the one button to push behind me here on the board. But I've got on here, I'm looking at the Webex board 85S and the demo room resource calendars here. So let's look at the, well, first of all, just off the differences here. If you'll notice that on the titles here, on the demo room resource, and this is just a room resource that I had just created yesterday for this, it's got the name Dustin Baker on it. And then over here on the Webex board, it's got hybrid calendar demo, and then of course my name on it as well. Now, when I open up this calendar, you're going to see here that it has got the title, Hybrid Calendar Demo. It's got the meeting information in here. It's got the time, and everything's good to go. So remember we talked about how our processing worked. So if I had a user that wasn't Hybrid Calendar enabled, so it means that our Webex service and Hybrid Calendar service had no clue or wasn't able to look at, in this particular instance, my calendar, then it would fall back to the attendee-based processing, and it would actually need to read the information in this invite for the device, the 85 board S, to be able to push that one button to push info down, like you see back here. So in this particular scenario, everything would work just fine. Now, I just want to show you this demo room resource. When I double-click on it, if you'll notice here that the title actually is just my name, because I'm the one that booked it. And you'll notice that there's no information in here. There's nothing in the body. So this is important to understand that if you consider that same scenario and Dustin was not hybrid calendar enabled, and I go to book this room, so our hybrid calendar service knows about this calendar and it goes to read this invite to get the information doesn't exist. It's not here. Matter of fact, it just has my name. I know that there's a meeting between this time, but I have no idea about any meeting details or join information. So the problem here is, in that scenario, the hybrid calendar wouldn't be able to put that one button to push information on that system. So this is a very, very key point here, is that, if you don't have your users enabled, you have to make sure that your room calendar resources are able to show and share that information. Now, why is this like this? So actually, I don't know why it's like this, but I can tell you that with Office 365, by default, what happens is that the room resources, whenever they're created, they have some calendar processing rules that are available. And one thing that they do is they delete the subject, they delete the comments, so the information inside the body of the email, and they also add the organizer, so whoever created the meeting, to the subject line. So they delete the subject, they add whoever organizes it to the subject line, and they delete the comments. So in this particular instance here, if you look at it, on this calendar, you'll notice that it kept the subject, it did not replace it with my name, and it kept the comments. If I look at this calendar, comments are deleted, the subject has been deleted, and it added my name to the subject field. So this is the default for room resources with Office 365 and Exchange. So what we have to do is we have to do some PowerShell commands to change this behavior to allow our meeting information to stay populated inside the meeting. So I'm going to bring you here to this tab here, and this is just basically the PowerShell command called set calendar processing. So what this is it's the PowerShell command that you're going to have to use. Now, I'm not going to do a demo on exactly how to get into PowerShell. I do have PowerShell up, so I'm going to show you a couple of these commands and kind of show you how we have the differences here. But these are all the variables that are available. But most importantly, we want to look at things like the delete comments that we have available here. We also have the add organizer to subject, and then we also have the delete subject parameters. Now, there's a couple other parameters here that you can use for different things, and we can talk about those in another video. But these are the three that we're going to focus on right now. And so what I'm going to do here is actually bring up my PowerShell. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and kind of give you an example here. And I'm logged into PowerShell. I've got a session imported. I'm going to copy and paste this. But what I'm doing here is I'm setting this calendar processing and I'm going to use the identity of DustinWebExBoard at WebExAvengers.com. That's the one that was already showing this. So I've already done this, but I'm going to show you this command again anyways. And I'm taking the delete subject, I'm making that value false, which by default is true. I'm taking the add organizer to subject, false, which is normally true, and then delete comments to false as well, which is normally true. Now, I've got this one in here. This says process external meeting messages. I have that now set to true. Now, there's a reason for that, and I'm going to add that. I'll talk about that at the end of this video because this is already going to be a long video, and some people may want to just kind of skip that. But we'll talk about that in a second and how that would help. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and you'll see that I'm actually setting these. And then the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to do now a get command. And this is part of the PowerShell. And I'm basically just going to do get calendar processing for my email account or room resource. And then I'm just going to format list. And what you're going to see here is it's basically getting all the values for me for that particular room resource. And if you'll look here now, I've actually got the delete comments is set to false. The delete subject is set to false. And add organizer to subject also set to false. So those settings that I did are actually there and available for me. And what I'm going to do now is actually just do a get, I'm doing this on the fly here, get calendar processing. And this time I'm going to do the demo room resource for you. Whoop, not format. We're going to do the same thing on the other one. And if you'll look here, look at some of these default settings. Delete comments, true. The delete subject also set to true. Add organizer to subject, true. So this is the default settings. So if I don't go through and change that on my room resource, I'm not going to be able to get that information. So again, in a nutshell, and just to kind of harp over this, because those settings are by default in Microsoft Office 365 and Exchange, this is going to provide a poor experience in general for my one button to push hybrid calendar if I do not have my users enabled for hybrid calendar. So in this particular scenario, because I have Dustin enabled for hybrid calendar, this room resource would still get one button to push. This is not required for you to do. This is only going to be required if you want to do what we call the attendee-based processing and allow it to be able to process that meeting for you and push that one button to push information down. Again, if you go ahead and make these changes and you're not having your users enabled, this is required so that way we can actually obtain the information and be aware of it to be able to push down. Now, I want to go back and touch one more last thing here, and this was the process external meetings or process external meeting messages, true. The reason I have this enabled is this allows me to, and I'm going to kind of give you a scenario here. So I have maybe a customer or someone that is inviting me to a meeting. And one of the primary use cases for the direct guest join or the Microsoft Teams WebRTC interop would be that, maybe I use something else, or maybe I have a Teams tenant, but I'm using the CVI solution because it's a better experience for me. But I have another customer or a partner or someone that I'm dealing with that is inviting me to their Teams tenant. Teams is very tenant based, so we've talked about that before, and so they don't have CVI, but you want to be able to take that meeting and you want to be able to join it. So when that meeting gets sent to me, and I have that meeting, I could then forward that meeting to one of my room systems. So in this case, we'll just talk about the board 85. So I get that meeting and then I forward it to another system. That's an external message. So I need to enable this flag so that way Outlook will be able to process that. And then again, with those same settings, will be able to allow me to accept this and be able to have all those meeting details in there. Once I have that, I'll be able to then join that meeting, get the one button to push, and everything would work. So that flag is pretty important to enable too. And these are flags that you can enable if you just do a Google search, we can actually put up a demo script too that can make this apply to all of your room systems. You can do these one at a time, or you can do a script to make these PowerShell commands to all your systems. But it's important for you to kind of know that. The last thing that I want to mention here is kind of a little bit of a caveat to this today. And this is something that we're working on, and we will have some enhancements to it, but it's not available today. There is the ability to do this forwarding of messages. However, if the person that is sending you that message is hybrid calendar enabled, and you then forward it to a room system on your org or your company organization, that processing of that meeting will not work. And I'm going to kind of explain to you why, and this is a good reason, and then what we're going to do to help kind of fix that. So remember when I talked before about the kind of order operations of how we process meetings. We're going to have the meeting owner, the meeting organizer, we're going to process them first. So if we realize that they are a hybrid calendar user, we're going to look that up. Then when we realize that there is an attendee, we will go ahead and push that information down. Well, whenever you forward that invite from another user who is hybrid calendar enabled, the problem there is that we realize that this person's hybrid calendar enabled. We're going to use them primarily, and we're going to use that as the single source of truth for this meeting information. But the device that we're aware of is in a different organization. And that's when we have a problem with what we call cross-org lookup. So the problem there becomes that there's a security problem. We don't want the hybrid calendar for this organization to be able to, it doesn't have access to the information or the exchange environment for getting that information to this other organization. So therefore, we have no way of being able to process that meeting information and put it onto that device. So today we fall back to the attendee-based processing, which allows for us to do this if a user is not enabled. So in that same scenario, someone sends me an invite, I forward it to my device. That person that originated that invite is not hybrid calendar enabled. We will actually work with that because we fall back to the attendee-based processing. We look at that calendar. We are looking to do something called always attendee process, which means that we will always be able to look at that calendar and be able to get that information in a scenario like that where we don't want to have the security cross-org lookup. So a little bit complicated, and it is one caveat that I wanted to mention, but just know that we have some enhancements coming to that, hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. Just stay tuned. We'll do another video when that happens. But again, sorry, extremely long video. We're up at about 20-something minutes now, but this was very important to get out, and I think it was going to be helpful for a lot of people. If you have any questions, please let us know, and look forward to you guys looking at these videos. We really appreciate the feedback and engagement. It's been great. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time.